Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Real Estate Rundown with Shannon Robnett. Today, my guest is the illustrious Sam Martin. Say hello, Sam.
Hello, Sam.
so,
Hey.
so I've known Sam for, going on about 15 years. And Sam has always been the guy you could go to find stuff. And when I mean that, I mean that Sam was always on the ground moving. And we always referred to him as the hustler because if there was something happening in the market, Sam knew what it was. And I've got a story that we'll share later, but Sam and I have done some business together. And lately, Sam has kind of really begun to focus his energy on the wholesale market. And Sam, tell us a little bit more about your journey, how you got into wholesaling, where you came from, and kind of give us your roundabout story.
Yeah, thanks, Shannon. Thanks for having me. I'm a local boy. I was born in Nampa in '78 in South Nampa and went to Greenhurst Elementary and South Junior High. And then later my folks' mom divorced and got remarried and moved to Eagle. And she had been in commercial real estate for a couple years at that time. And I grew up listening to talks about office leases and commercial building sales and retail. And my mom actually worked for a developer named Winston Moore, W.H. Moore Company, for about 15 years. It's even actually prior to that, my biological dad, who my mom had divorced from, they moved from Colorado in the mid 70s to Nampa. And my dad actually started Nampa Realty in like 76. He co-founded Nampa Realty, which stood on the corner, kitty corner from Nampa High until about a year ago, and it was torn down and became an Einstein's Oilery. But so I'm a second generation. I was a realtor until 2 years ago. I held my real estate license for approximately 17 years. I got it in 2002, June of 2002. It was about 16 years, 10 months. But anyway, second generation realtor, Idaho native, born in Nampa, grew up in my junior high days in Eagle, was really more interested in getting out of school than in school. It's amazing. I'm blessed to have graduated. I can add and subtract, and I can read, and that's pretty much the extent of the scope. But anyway, so graduated Eagle High in '97, was a ski bum for a couple years, moved to Bend, Oregon after getting my butt in some trouble with a couple DUIs in my late teens, early 20s, just running around being drunk, dumb, partying, and stupid. And so I moved to Bend, Oregon for a couple years and was a snowboard bum. And eventually got my license back and bought a Subaru, because that's what you do when you live in Bend, Oregon. You buy a Subaru Legacy or some type of wagon. So snowboarded 72 days a year. Eventually, my first year, second year was like 50 sometimes, and third year was the same. Worked at a snowboard shop, and I was in sales at the snowboard shop, which most of my jobs through high school and out of high school were all sales. Pretty much, I think every single job I had for the most part. But I worked at a snowboard shop, which was great because I was able to take the commissions on the gear that I sold all the tourists from Portland and apply it and buy my own, newest $600 snowboard or $300 bindings, and on a Sunday or Saturday morning. And my roommate came out and he said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I think I'm moving home." And he's like, "You're moving in with your parents?" And I said, "Well, yeah, probably when I move back." But yeah, I moved back to Boise. And so I was in Bend for about two and a half years. Moved back to Boise in '01, got my real estate license within about a year of being back. I always knew I wanted to go into real estate. Growing up, listening to real estate in the house, very blessed to have learned through osmosis or just by being around it in the household, for sure. because I picked up so many things that I didn't even know I was learning, you know. But anyways, got my license ended up getting my real estate license in June of '02. I moved back to Boise in '01. And then I went to work. About that time, my mom, Debbie Martin, left Winston Moore, W.H. Moore Company, after 15, 16 years. And she started DK Commercial, which stands for Deborah K. It started with a guy that she met in broker class, and they partnered up and started DK, and I joined. And so there's three of us. We were at Gary Christensen. He owned a building he just built at 9th and Idaho, and he had the Banner Bank building in the works. And we actually officed in Gary Christensen's office with Bill Beck. And so my intro into the commercial world was officing with the downtown developer, a tenant rep advisory, I believe, was Bill Beck's tenant rep company. And then my mom, who just started DK Commercial. And my mom literally handed me a phone book and said, all of your clients are in here. You know, I said I'd done a lot of sales as a kid. I'd won scooters from selling candy bars and raffle tickets and pies for carnivals and all sorts of stuff. But so anyways, got into real estate and was pretty much just a commercial broker. Did a lot of leasing, started doing sales. A couple years in, I met you. Yeah. And I think we did some build-to-suit leases. I think we probably did some build-to-suit sales on a couple buildings. Yeah, I know we did some with Lamont over in Meridian. I remember we did some stuff with him behind the car wash. Right. Mom and I worked on a project across the street with Randy Hopkins and Doug Tamura, Fairview Lakes. Yep. And I was in my 20s. When I moved back, I was 22 and got my license. I was 23. You know, a lot of the people who get into commercial real estate's not really any harder, I think, than residential. In a lot of ways, it's probably easier in some regards because everybody's supposed to know your stuff. The commercial world, but a lot of those guys are, college educated. It seems like a lot of people who get hired at commercial brokerages or go to work in commercial have college degrees. It's my opinion. There's more college degrees in the commercial world than the residential realtor world. Just an observation. I didn't have a college degree. I was a snowboard bum who dropped out of a community college after getting a couple DUIs in my teens and leaving Boise. And so I dressed up the part, and I happened to know a little bit because I grew up in a commercial household. I was running around in suits and ties and just started grinding. I would call dentists and chiropractors and CPAs and financial planners, and I would go to chamber functions, and I was in leads groups, and I would go to BOMA, and I would go volunteer at, Life's Kitchen soup kitchens, and I would, you mix and mingle, and I grinded for years, and I eventually went from Macy suits to Men's Warehouse suits to Joseph A. Banks suits, and in that time, I went from a Volkswagen Jetta to an Audi to an H2 Hummer at the time. Right. Later was repossessed during the recession when my income went from just shy of twos to barely over 30 grand. I had to short sell my house during the recession after having a newborn. And that was, and then later, 2 months later, I got my car repossessed in my accountant's parking lot. And this was after I was quasi-successful at grinding and calling and building rapport and relationships as a realtor and doing leases and sales and making a fairly good living, and ended up marrying my high school sweetheart in this time, which we later divorced. But we had 2 kids through this. And so the plan was to get into real estate. And after being a snowboard bum and all that stuff for a while, I came back, got into real estate, ended up reuniting with my high school sweetheart, which I thought was the greatest thing ever, and had a couple kids, which was the best blessing, was the kids. But, thinking I was going to be in commercial real estate forever and really had a heart and desire for it. The recession hit hard. Like I said, I already coughed up to having to short sell my house and getting my vehicle repossessed in my accountant's parking lot. But I finally made it through the recession. During that time, I was actually giving out resumes to Ashley Furniture and AT&T and I think I went to RC Willie, Sprint, trying to get another job because my income had dropped so much as a commercial realtor doing sales and leasing. Fortunately, no one hired me, which was probably the best thing that ever happened to me because it made me stay in this profession I'd been in for 8 years.
So how'd you transfer from where you were at into flipping? I mean, what got you into flipping?
Well, and this is kind of part of it. I know I've kind of rambled more about the career, but through the recession, I got into land. And that's how I got a better relationship with guys like you and other developers in town.
That was that $900,000 cup of coffee we had.
Yeah, exactly. I had sold multiple developers land direct. I don't have any secret sauce. I just go direct to the people who do the deals. Right. Instead of getting people and layers in between, I go direct to sources. So instead of looking for properties with a realtor, I go and look for properties.
Right.
Then I'm just dealing with a seller, right? Yeah. So then when I would find one, instead of going looking for a realtor with a developer, I would go look for a developer. So now I got a seller and a developer and me. That's way better than a realtor with a seller and a realtor with a buyer and me. So I honed this craft of just going direct to people, and that's really part of how I built my career, probably how I met you through Mom, but I mean, really it's just, that's probably the biggest skill set that I've honed or attained is just getting direct to people. I used to cold call people, walk right past the receptionist and say, "Hey, I'm here for Corey." And I never had anyone tackle me. And it was the greatest thing ever. And I would have clients who would absolutely just start laughing when I would walk in their office, and they're the CEO of a company. And they would just look at me and they're like, "How'd you get in here?" And I said, "I told them I was here to see you," and I kept walking. Through the recession, started doing a lot of land and stuff, and I saw all these investors who were buying these deals in the recession, and I was trying to sell them deals, and every once in a while I would, and I could make a paycheck and pay some bills and feed my family, and this went on for a couple of years while we worked through the recession, but it really made me look at being a realtor a lot different. I had been successful as a realtor, and then due to economic circumstances, I had had a lot of downtimes as a realtor. And then I was back in a point, coming out 2012, 13, 14, 15, 16, as it just started all getting better. I started losing interest in being a realtor, and I was good at finding sellers and I was good at finding buyers. I didn't want to find buyers and sellers for each other anymore. I wanted to be the buyer and the seller. And because the guys I saw in the recession who were being the buyers and the sellers were the ones who were making the big plays. And so I started losing an interest in being a realtor. I started buying and selling a few deals here and there. And when I say deals, I invest in residential, commercial, land, and multifamily. So I invest.
Take a swipe at it all.
Yeah, I invest in real estate.
Right.
I happen to invest in more houses because there's a lot more houses than anything else.
So Sam, how did you come from I mean, we just heard your story about how everything was taken away in the recession, like happened with a lot of us, but how did you get from there to being able to buy something? How could you afford that?
Well, OPM, other people's money. It's one of the greatest concepts. It's just leverage. But so to do a real estate deal, you need one or two things. You need the money or the deal. If you got one of those, you can do a deal. So coming out of recession where I had lost my H2 Hummer and I had lost my house and I had a newborn and we were pregnant again, coming out of that recession and losing interest in making 2 and 3 and 4% when I could make chunks, but I didn't have any cash, but I could find the deal. So I would go find the deal. So as I transitioned, when I said I started doing a few deals, that's what I did. I was still brokering and people needed, I've been in the business now at this point 14 years as a commercial and land investment, leasing and sales broker. I used to shave. I used to wear suits and ties. You caught me on a day where I wear a collared shirt, but I always have a hat on usually. And there's a little bit there, but so anyways, the transition was more of a mental one as I guess my time in the market and seeing what the players did. But I bought properties with OPM, other people's money. I buy probably 99% of my real estate deals with 100% financing, outside funding, meaning not my cash.
So how did you connect with that outside cash?
My primary lending source, the relationship that lends me probably 80% of my capital, that guy owned some land, and I cold called him on a for sale by owner sign 2008.
So right as we were tipping over the edge.
Yeah, and I later sold his land about 18 months later after he had it listed with 2 different brokerages. No one sold it because we're in a recession. And 18 months later, I was able to close a deal. And these are the kind of things. So I had the buyer and I knew the seller. Even though he'd been listed with other brokerages, I was still trying to get my buyer to buy it, even when it was listed. The timing just wasn't right. Once it wasn't listed anymore, I stayed on the seller. My buyer finally came around and was ready to buy. And this was a $250,000 purchase price. With my fee, the price, the purchase price at closing was $275,000.
Right.
My commission was $25,000.
Right.
On a $275,000 property. Now, as a normal realtor, what would a normal commission be on a $275,000 property?
10 grand.
10 grand. I made 25.
Because you negotiated that, right?
Well, I made 25 because I was one, I was the only realtor involved.
Right.
2, I was direct to the seller.
Right.
3, I was direct to the buyer. And 4, it was a really good deal at 275. The seller wanted to net 250. And so once I knew the seller's net number, I went to my buyer and said, here's the deal. It's a good deal at 275. The seller wants 250. I want 25 because it's a good deal at 275. And I've kept you in the loop on this for 2 years. And the buyer said, it's a good deal at 275. I'll pay that.
Right.
So anyways.
Well, that's kind of like our story, you know. I mean, you and I had a cup of coffee a couple years back, and you know, I was just wanting to catch up and see what you had, and you told me about this piece of property, and it was $850,000, and you knew the buyer or you knew the seller, and I said, that sounds good. What was it, Sam? About 75 days later, I called you back, and I said, Sam, you got that buyer's rep or that seller's rep contract? And you said, nope, but I'll go get it. I called you back 3 hours later. You tracked the guy down. He was at a liquor store, and you were signing the seller's rep contract on the liquor store countertop.
Yeah.
And I met you an hour and a half later and presented you a full price offer.
I don't remember that I met the seller there, but that's fun. Yeah, it doesn't surprise me.
No, I remember you did, because I'm like, Sam, I got this. Where you at? You go, dude, I'm tracking him down. He's headed, because it was right around Christmas time, and he was going to get some holiday cheer, and you'd met him there. And but that's the same thing, you know, that's the persistence, right? So then what is it about wholesaling that you're doing all the time that you can share with us about what people should be doing?
Yeah, so it's a real interesting transition. Being good at getting direct to a seller and a buyer as a realtor was a real good transition as an investor if you're willing to take on the risk and just go out and be direct to a seller, meaning, you know, instead of tell the seller I want to sell their property, tell them I want to buy their property.
So how do you
to buy their property, I need to buy it at a good price. And if I get it at a good enough price, the market will want to buy the property in its current condition for cash, and they'll close fast.
So how do you find your sellers?
I don't keep very good numbers, and I need to work on that, but at least, you know, 50% is some kind of referral or sphere, you know, part of my sphere of influence, or somebody referred somebody, or I heard, you know, if a deal finds me somehow, then I would say a good 30 to 40% I go find. I have a closing this Friday that's a deal I sold 2 weeks ago. I went and door knocked the seller about 5 weeks ago. I door knocked the seller. This was before the COVID and we were all on lockdown. So 5-6 weeks ago, I door knocked the seller. They're in foreclosure. Caught the lady outside while she's loading the kids in the car. I didn't look at the property that day, but told her I was an investor and that I paid cash for properties and there's no commissions and I could cash her out before the foreclosure that's coming up. You know, you have to be kind of honest and upfront with people. Like, you know, I don't think I think she knew why I was standing there, that she knows she hasn't made a payment for 6 months.
Right.
And, you know, you don't say it in any weird way. You say, you know, I can help, you know, cash out your property before the foreclosure. And she called me back a week later and we went pending. There's a house in Meridian that I went pending at $200,000, and I was able to sell my contract for $20,000. And when I sell my assignments, I require half deposit, which is non-refundable. So I went pending on a Sunday, and I sold my contract on Tuesday, and got 10 grand. And then I'll get the other 10 grand when it closes this Friday.
So Sam, if somebody's looking to get into wholesaling, what would you suggest they do to get started?
As I stated, to do real estate deals, you need one of two things. You need a deal or cash. Wholesaling, in some regards, isn't 100% real estate investing, I think, because it's not. We talked about this because of my background as a commercial and land broker or realtor. I approach wholesaling a lot more through the eyes of, you know, real estate, realtor law, you know, consumer protective, buyer beware, all this. Wholesaling is not illegal. It's perfectly legal. Assignments are legal to do. In fact, they're on the Idaho Association Realtor form. This contract may or may not be assigned. When the realtors, but when they assign a contract, it's usually just so someone can buy it under a different LLC. When I assign a contract, I'm selling my position, right? But if somebody wanted to get into wholesaling, I mean, you got to find a deal. You need a deal or cash. You don't need cash to wholesale, but obviously you need sources of capital to purchase properties.
So if people have a deal, they should contact you, and you'll find them the cash, and you'll get everybody involved.
Yeah. If somebody has something they think's a deal, residential, commercial, land, or multifamily, I'd be happy to chat with you.
So how do they get a hold of you, Sam?
Well, you can hit me on my cell if you want, 208-283-2953. My company website is idahopropertybuyer.com. I'm coming to you from our office building that I purchased with my mom, a business partner, 30 days ago or so.
Yep.
And this property I purchased just through a relationship. I purchased it from Ada County Highway District. Right. And it was open for the public. Anybody could have bought it. There was a little sign out on Curtis. It's about 18 inches by 24 and had the auction date. And I was the only one who showed up.
Well, Sam, I appreciate you taking some time to chat with us and share your insight. I want to remind everybody, if you're looking for Sam, you can find him on his website at idahopropertybuyer.com. So, Sam, I really appreciate you taking some time. We look forward to talking with you again here on the Real Estate Rundown. Thanks, everybody.